This is a quick overview video of the Axiom. We're going to be looking under the hood at what makes the Axiom and HPA tick. So the Axiom is a really unique design. It's got probably one of the best form factors, in my opinion, on HPA at this time. It has a couple of modular features. It has the barrel shroud can be removed pretty quickly. The battery is stored in the handle, which is a conveniently located position for it. It has a top access door and a thumb bump mag release with a bullpup configuration, and it has a remote line going from the bottom of the blaster and it feeds into the supercore. Pretty straightforward. We're going to look at what is more inside. So the Axiom has kind of two sections. It's got the rear half and the front half, the grip and the shell. All the fun stuff is in the back, or the shell, and the trigger mechanism is in the grip. It's a simple switch, toggles a electro-pneumatic solenoid, which activates the airflow. Pretty simple. It's got a quick 90-degree bend into the output of the solenoid. Then we have the air release, the output, the exhaust of the solenoid, and then the pressure in line of the solenoid. The battery is stored in the handle. Pretty simple. This HPA system is a remote line, so there is no second stage regulator on board the blaster. So we would take our air source and our second stage regulator, and then have a line feeding from the second stage regulator into their blaster. It's very simple. As you can see, there's not very many parts or moving components. The regulator and tank that we're using are rated for higher PSI than we're actually outputting in a typical airsoft or paintball application, and so it's actually safer than a lot of those other applications for HPA. The regulator we have here is quality checked, passed, and manufactured to a pretty high standard. So the equipment here that has the 3000 PSI air tank, the 800 PSI output into this regulator, this equipment is, as long as you take care of it and it's not expired, it will most likely not fail and is not super dangerous. The only potential form of injury that is most common is if there is a break in your connection or your air line. You're going to have a lot of air that is lost. However, that air that we're putting from the second stage regulator into the rest of our system is only about 100 psi at the maximum, maybe, depending on what FPS you're shooting. So that pressure in this hose line is not very different at all from a typical household air compressor. So you have a little bit of an air hose whipping around, but not incredibly too much to worry about. You will have to worry about your line potentially getting snagged on a remote line system. It could get stuck on a tree branch, or it could get tangled, and that's something you have to think about. Also, this system setup currently does not have an on or off for the airflow. So in order to turn the airflow on or off, you'll have to connect all of this together and then install your air source or your air tank. And in order to turn it off, you have to then unscrew your air tank. So there's no kind of convenient system that is integrated into this setup I'm showing you. However, you can get a different regulator like an Empire Reg with an on and off lever, or you can get a simple valve that you can turn on or off, and I would highly recommend that, especially if you're running a lot of remote line. I personally prefer bottle on or like a bottle stock setup form. It is convenient and you have a little more flexibility. However, it makes the blaster you're using a little less wieldy because it'll be almost twice as heavy with the size of the air tank you're using. So it's kind of a trade-off But if you're using a remote line, I recommend an on and off, or at least a switch setup, so you can easily disconnect and reconnect. Also, these are just push to connect fittings, not the most ideal setup, especially if you're gonna be plugging them in and out repeatedly, because it'll wear away your air hose, your air line, or the fittings will wear out. So if you have a quick connect, either a paintball or an airsoft style connector, then those would be much more ideal for a remote line setup. We'll have more content on a remote line setup and the most ideal, or maybe some different ways to construct a remote line, but this is the inside look at the Axiom, and so you can know what you're getting into as far as what you'll need for the setup. This line here is about 2 to 3 feet long for the remote line, going from your blaster platform to your secondary regulator setup on your gear. And that is it. So we have air into solenoid into the supercore, powered by your typical LiPo wiring. Yeah.